There are many facets to the world of pop culture, from the treacle of pop music to the spectacle of the superhero film. There is another side to the pop culture that we immerse ourselves in. Just one channel over, or one more YouTube video deep, is a dark place, a weird place. Tonight we explore the dark and weird that is Junji Ito. There is a long tradition of horror in the sequential arts, from the American pre-code comic books like Black Cat Mysteries or Chamber of Chills, to supernatural superheroes of today like Ghost Rider or Swamp Thing. But here in the United States, a whole segment of horror comics is often overlooked: the horror manga. By combining the art of cartooning with an aesthetic of traditional Japanese art, manga has a rich heritage that sees its roots in the simplification of art from woodblock printing and imaki. After the Allied occupation of Japan, many of the cultural influences of American comics and cartooning, combined with a stylistic cartooning of trailblazers like Osamu Tezuka, created a lot of what we think of as manga today. In the shadows of the shonen and shoujo manga to read in lending libraries in Japan was a little slice of horror. In the 60s and 70s, worlds like Gegege no Kitaro and Drifting Classroom became mainstream, bringing attention to the genre. In 1986, Asahi Sonorama founded Halloween magazine to focus purely on horror manga. Quickly, Junji Ito's Tomie series became one of the most notable stories in the publication. Born in the 60s, Ito was introduced to horror manga at a young age, introduced to titles like The Drifting Classroom by his older brothers. In the 80s, while working as a dental technician, he submitted Tomie to Sonorama's magazine and was a runner-up for the Kazuo Umezu Prize. He has continued since then, even winning the Eisner Award in 2019 for his adaptation of Frankenstein. Junji Ito's body of work is impressive. With dozens of books and adaptations of his work to film and television, it is so impressive that we won't get to everything today, and frankly some of his work has never been translated into English. But let's hit some of the highlights. This first work of Junji Ito's is probably his most recognizable. Originally published in the monthly Halloween, starting in 1987, Tomie is a series of short tales that detail the existence of the title character. Her origin in the very first story is clear. On a school trip, Tomie is called out for having an affair with her teacher. A jealous boyfriend pushes her off a cliff face, killing her. In an effort to dispose of the body, the infidelitous teacher wrangles all the males in the class to help him saw Tomie's body into 42 pieces. One for each male in the class, to hide separately in secret. While this is presented as her first death, it is easy to find as you delve deeper into the book that maybe she is something older and darker. Is this her first death? Because it certainly isn't her last. The very next day, Tomie arrives at school, much to the horror of her teacher, her fellow students, and of course the student that killed her. There is something that was hinted at before her death, a power to drive men wild, but a wild that is driven to serve Tomie's every whim, and to resent her until with fractured mind that man is compelled to hack Tomie apart once again. Tomie is something other than human. Whether ghost or creature is unknown, but every time she is graphically torn limb from limb she returns, sometimes growing from the floor that her blood lays upon, sometimes hundreds at a time. The victim of experiments and torture of all types, Tomie always has her revenge, or causes her own death. That is kind of the crux of Tomie. Is she the victim or the victor? Sometimes you relate to the madness that the men are driven to by Tomie's constant demands, or jealousy stoked by Tomie's quicksilver take on relationships. But the violence always outweighs the offense. Tomie is put through every brutality that you can think of. Some of those weary of fighting her attempt to dissolve gallons of Tomie into sake. One of her victims wants her to age, so she can suffer, seeing herself aged and withered. And to keep her from escaping, she is put in a block of concrete, a terrifying analog to the Junko Furuta murder. The men in these stories fall prey to their own narcissism, their own jealousy, their own security, their own loneliness. They are devoured by their emotions until they must destroy the source of those emotions. This complicated relationship between violence towards women and the violent fantasies that some men wish they could indulge in, and Tomie's indestructibility and consistent revenge make for a brilliantly chilling series of tales that often leave a hollow feeling behind when you are done reading them. Originally serialized from 2001 to 2002 in Big Comic Spirits, Gyo is something altogether different from anything most people have ever read or seen. The plot is so bonkers that it is the kind of thing that you would expect to see in a trauma film. Tadashi and his girlfriend Kaori are spending some quality time on the island of Okinawa. Having some fun scuba diving, Kaori is suddenly confronted with a nauseating smell that overwhelms her. Tadashi can't smell the odor, but Kaori is slowly becoming more and more hysterical about it. As they watch, fish with strange biomechanical legs begin to pour out of the ocean. Their spindly legs tipped with a point sharp enough to go right through the human body. Panic sets in, and Tadashi and Kaori flee. Leaving Okinawa, they head back to Tokyo, but it is only a matter of time before the legged fish beset Tokyo as well. This is just the start of what may be the most creatively bizarre story I have ever read. Tadashi makes his way with Kaori to his uncle, who is a scientist. To try to get to the bottom of what is happening, he begins to run experiments. His uncle, Koyanagi, reveals that the fish aren't alive. They are infected with a disease that causes them to create and release an excessive amount of gas that powers the legs. The irregular flow of the gas gives the automatons a lifelike quality. As the fish die and decay, humans begin to become infected with the disease, causing them to bloat into distorted horrors. Their mouths and anuses spewing toxic gases in streams. Kaori soon falls victim to the disease. Disgusted with her smell and her image, she commits suicide. So in an effort to research, Koyanagi attaches her corpse to a set of legs that he has built in an effort to make a superior design. When the Kaori creature escapes, Tadashi is forced to explore the streets of Tokyo searching for her. Each vista is worse than the last. Whether it be a circus transformed by the disease and legs, or a flying version of the mechanism with Koyanagi's corpse strapped to it, or the lumbering hulks made out of hundreds of human bodies, all spewing their noxious gases. In the end, a small group of people immune to the gas try to move on in a decimated world. The presentation of this truly bizarre tale still hints at greater themes. What should the limitations of science be? What are the ramifications of going too far? When is something truly alive? What happens when the world spins out of control? Like Tomie, Ito also deals with relationship woes in Gyo. Tadashi and Kaori have a very intense story arc that carries Kaori to death and beyond and back to death. The story ends, but this world goes on, constantly decaying like a festering sore. The mechanisms are still moving, hoping to latch onto their next power source, their next victim. Somewhere in between mechanical device and living being. If Tomie is the best known of Ito's work, then Uzumaki is the most obtuse. The town of Kurozusho is going through some changes, and Kiri is witness to all of it. The town has become obsessed with spirals, and by that I don't mean the citizens of the town. I mean the town itself. Spirals infect the minds of the inhabitants like some kind of disease spread by the city, and Kiri's friend Suichi thinks that the two of them should get out of town while they still can. Kiri is hesitant to go. Her father needs his help with work, and she isn't about to just abandon her family or school. But by the time she has made the decision to leave, it is too late. The town has been inundated with disturbing manifestations of the spiral, from people turning into human snails to smoke from the crematorium spiraling down into the local lake. Pottery made with the clay from the lake twists itself into tortured shapes with screaming faces. Hair develops a mind of its own, and with oversized curls attempts to destroy the competition. The town has become bleak, and when an earthquake hits, leveling everything except for the ancient row houses scattered throughout the city, things become even more dire and surreal. This is Lovecraft taken to the next level, something akin to the bizarrety of John Dies at the End, but with less humor. This is something truly otherworldly. The themes of depression, alienation, and the sense that a bad place can capture you mentally or even physically will make even the staunchest brain balk. Uzumaki is deep and in a lot of ways a poignant book, but it is paired with some of the most disturbing body horror you can envision. If that doesn't leave an impression on you, I'm afraid nothing will. Junji Ito is truly a master of his craft, and we are barely scraping the surface of his body of work. He has several books of short stories, an adaptation of Mary Shelley's classic Frankenstein. A series of movies has been made about Tomie. Uzumaki was made into a film and is being turned into an anime at the time of this release. The depth of the chills, the cringe from the obscene, the nervous feeling you get in the pit of your stomach that says the world is an unloving place. Ito deserves that, and to us it is the most delightful and darkly artistic thing we can think of. Here's to some reading right before bed, cult. Hope it doesn't give you any nightmares. There you have it, cult. The latest episode of Dark and Weird. Oh, you know what? We just barely scraped the surface of Mangaka Junji Ito's work. But be sure, if you haven't read it, to go check those out and then dig even further. I promise you'll like what you see. While you're at it, visit us. darkandweird.com. There's way more videos there, and of course, you could get a shirt or a tape or something like that. Join us on Fridays at 5 p.m. for cult worship, and give us a like and a subscribe. Maybe hit the little bell so you get a notification. Next time we'll be talking about Alan Wagner, and boy guys, I think you're gonna be real excited about this. Until next time, dearest cult, remember, if you never sleep, you never die. Dark and weird.